meeting for the share back.
Thanks,
Casey.
Yeah, my name's Dan. I'm a recovered drug addict. Thanks for inviting me to share. I welcome any newcomers or if anyone's back from a relapse. I'm going to talk about relapse. As described in the book, relapse is the crux of the problem. It's definitely was for me. I've never been to jail. I've never been on the streets. I've never been homeless. I'm sitting in this chair, Cocaine Anonymous, and what distinguishes me as being an addict, as opposed to a hard drinker or a hard user, is the absolute inability to leave it alone. No matter the great necessity or the wish. That was my story. No matter what went on in my life, what consequences happened as a result of my relapses and my using, I went and picked up again, time and time again, and that went on for quite a few years. I won't go into anything that went on before my drug using. I don't feel it's necessary for me to talk about it. Nothing really went on in my life as a kid. I started using drugs, started drinking because I enjoyed the effect it had on me. That was as simple as that. I started off smoking pot, smoking weed while I was still in school. Yeah, it did have a little effect on my grades and my behaviour in school, but I was able to put it down when I wanted to. I enjoyed it, same as the drink. I started drinking 12 years old, 13 years old, with friends. Again, I enjoyed it, and I was able to put it down. The only real consequence of that was probably being sick and waking up with a hangover. And I might have said, I ain't doing that next weekend, knowing full well that I was going to go and do it. That's really how I started. Going fast forward a few years, I got an apprenticeship with a big company. It was a good job. I started doing well for myself. I was old enough then to go out in the town, drinking, taking speed, pills, the party drugs, cocaine come on the scene, and straight away that was sort of the drug for me. And I'll say this now, it was my drug of choice back then. I had the money to spend on drugs. I was able to dish it out, and the only real consequences even then was, I'd get flat out drunk. Yes, was I able to control how much I was using or drinking? I don't really know. A lot of my friends that aren't addicts aren't able to control how much they use or drink once they start. So, I don't know where I crossed the line, but when I started seeing a problem was, when things started to happen in my life as a result of the drug using, getting into debt. And for me back then, I thought I had a money problem. I couldn't really see then that it was the fact that I couldn't put the drugs down, or I could put the drugs down, but I couldn't stop picking them up again. I had a well-paid job. I had a girlfriend. I was able to buy a house. I was able to do pretty well in life. But the drugs started to creep in, and it was probably 10 years ago, looking back, it was probably about 10 years ago. I started using drugs without really wanting to. Things happened, i.e. I was using pretty much on a daily basis. I was using at work, or or I'd used the night before and I wasn't able to go to work. Work was sort of finding out, you know, you know, the days off I was having, I was able to blag it for a certain amount of time. But, you know, as people do, they get suspicious. And on a particular day, I sniffed a line of cocaine in the toilet. And at this point, I was using every day. And someone heard me, and it was my boss. And they pulled me into the meeting room and, you know, questioned me around the fact that, are you using drugs at work? No. Okay, we'll take you for a drug test. Okay. So they took me down the next day. And straight away I said to myself, well, I'll stop now. You know, the day at that point I'll stop using and I might be all right for the test, for the drug test tomorrow. Probably lasted a few hours until I finished work, completely forgot that was going to happen, and I went and picked up again. You know, looking back now, the spree probably hadn't put me down. I wouldn't class that as a relapse, it was just on me. So, long story short, I got drug tested. Took a week later for the results to come back, and they were positive, and I got sacked. So I said point blank, right, you know, the missus has just found out. She's put 2 and 2 together. Why I'm in so much debt, thousands of pounds worth of debt. To this. So there was a first real firm resolution. I'm not going to do this again. A few days later, forgot about that. Forgot how bad it was. Forgot about the fact I lost the job. I'm on it again, and I couldn't explain why. Nothing was really going on for me. You know, I didn't feel down. I didn't feel pissed off. Just out of the blue, suddenly I thought it'll be a good idea to go and pick up. Started off another spree, and you know, again and again and again, the book talks about a senseless series of sprees, and it was senseless. You know, I couldn't quite understand what was going on, and so yeah, in More About Alcoholism, it says, what sort of thinking dominates an alcoholic or an addict who repeats time after time the desperate experiment of the first drink, or the first line, or the first pipe. Friends who have reasoned with him after a spree which has brought him to the point of divorce or bankruptcy are mystified when he walks directly into a saloon. Why does he? Of what is he thinking? Most of the time I weren't thinking. You know, time after time I'd get confronted, and usually it'd be my girlfriend at the time. You know, why did you go and do it again? I couldn't answer it. I did not have the answer. And that was the most baffling thing. You know, if I had a reason to go and do it, then, you know, I could sort of understand. But the fact is that, you know, no matter what was going on, no matter how bad it got after the last spree, I couldn't bring to mind the consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation, you know, and that's how it describes it in the book. The book says here in More About Alcoholism, in some circumstances we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. We now see that when we began to drink deliberately instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during a period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. My sound reasoning, it says our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and in sincerity how it could have happened. Time and time again, you know, I'd question myself. Why have I gone and done that again? You know, I had a spree that lasted a few months, and as a result of that, I had a seizure, and a pretty bad seizure that nearly killed me, and it was in front of my wife at that point, and I was hospitalised, and I came out of hospital and I swore blind, this is it, you know, new beginning, this ain't going to happen again. And I was signed off work for 4 weeks, and straight away forgot about that seizure, forgot about how bad that was, and I was flat out again. You know, if I was a heavy user, I you know, and that was the great necessity to stop. You know, the firm warnings of the doctor. You know, stop doing this, else you're gonna die. That would have been enough, but I forgot all of that. I thought it'd be alright to just go and have half a gram. Yeah, and it was never just half a gram, you know, but I'd think it would be. You know, whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? You know, yeah, my sprees led me to go into treatment last March, and I thought this was it, you know, paid for by my family. I've been taken out of society. I've never been to a meeting before, never been part of a fellowship. And I started to feel pretty good. I was in there for a month. And in that time, I started to attend Cocaine Anonymous meetings. And I thought, wow, I'm not the only one that suffers with this illness. And it was great, surrounded by addicts. And I came out, you know, with all the willpower in the world that, you know, this is going to be great now, you know. It's all out in the open, everyone knows. And the very next day I went and picked up an 8th gear and again started another spree. You know, what had happened. I completely forgot what it was going to be like. You know, I just spent a month and I started feeling well. I started thinking that I was doing all right. And I relapsed. And that, you know, that happened again over and over again. And this time I'm attending meetings. You know, I go to a meeting, I'll pick up a newcomer keyring and I get patted on the back, Dan, it's going to be all right. Normally, and I've sat in this meeting and I've walked out the door and I've gone and used again. You know, I thought, well, why is this happening to me? Other people seem to be getting well and I seem to be getting worse. And it did, it got worse and worse and worse. And, you know, I kept trying to assert my will. You know, I'd even started going through the steps. And I didn't really understand what I suffered with. You know, that was the main problem. I still thought I could do something to prevent a relapse. I still thought I could put something in place to prevent me from going and doing it again. I thought going to a meeting, you know, a meeting every day of the week was enough to keep me clean. You know, how could it be? I could sit in a meeting for an hour and a half of the day. Well, what do I do on the, you know, when I'm out of the meeting? You know, looking back, you know, I could see people getting well and I just couldn't understand why I wasn't. You know, it took me to the point of relapse after relapse after relapse to bump into someone else who actually told me, Dan, you might not be all right and you are going to relapse again. You know, carrying on the way you're going, it's going to happen again. But he also said it's all right if you do. You know, it's what happens if you're an addict. You know, it's, like I said, as the book describes, it is the crux of the problem. You know, it's what happens. We can't explain it. I still can't explain why I do it, but I've given up trying to work out why I go and do it. And you know, it took me to that point where I started looking at things differently. I read more about alcoholism in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where it describes the illness in detail, and I started relating to pretty much all of it. You know, the jaywalker, for instance, I'll just read this bit. Our behaviour is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink, or line, or pipe, as that of an individual with a passion safe or jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him, and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he is hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you if he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can no longer work, his wife gets a divorce, and he is held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself up in asylum, hoping to mend his ways, but the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may have been in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? You know, as soon as I read that the bit in that chapter, you know, that it resembles my life. You know, swap jaywalking for drinking or drug using to start with. I loved it. Loved the thrill of it. On through the years, things started to happen. You know, my health was deteriorating. You know, I was hospitalised, and the firm resolution started coming in. You know, but on through the years, this conduct continues. You know, continually promising my missus, my family, the people around me that I loved, and I truly meant it. This ain't gonna happen again, and it did. So, what happened then? You know, the guy that sort of disturbed me around the fact that it was going to happen again, and I asked him to be my sponsor, and we started going through the steps, and I still had in my head that going through the steps was going to be enough to keep me clean and to keep me, you know, prevent me from relapsing. But it wasn't. You know, I got to step 12 and I was even going to meetings trying to find people to sponsor, you know, on the basis that that's going to keep me clean. Inevitably, I relapsed. And as a result of that, looking back and the reasons and the intentions of doing this stuff was still selfish, you know. But also as a result of that, and I had to have that experience to fully realise that there wasn't anything I could do. You know, that's why I introduced myself as a recovered addict, because I fully admitted that there is nothing that I can do in my human power. There's no will in me to prevent me from relapsing, which has set me free from trying to control things. You know, I've not put any strategies in place to prevent myself from to prevent it happening again. You know, and it's pretty freeing. You know, all my duty today is just to go and try and help people. You know, as it says in step 12. You know, share this message. You know, and there's nothing quite like sitting down in front of a relapsing drug addict. and seeing it in his eyes, the powerlessness, which correlates to step 12 and step 1. Seeing the powerlessness of a guy you're working with sort of reminds me of how powerless I am. I am a hopeless drug addict with no more power today than I had when I first came into the fellowship of Cocaine Anonymous. I've been able to connect with a higher power, which I choose to call God. That is the only way of, for me, that is the solution. Going through the steps to connect to a higher power, to be in a position where you can go and help the next suffering addict. To me, that's a beautiful way of life. I don't fear relapse. I'm aware that can happen to me at any point, as the experience shows. As it stands at the minute, I've not relapsed for a little while, and that's nothing more, nothing short of a miracle. If you're new to CA or you're back from a relapse and you're still struggling, I suggest you get a sponsor who works from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Go through the steps, and hopefully you'll have a spiritual awakening as a result of them, and you're able to go and help others. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.